Sports Talk Chicago. Here with Jon Zaghloul, and we are back and ready for today's special guest. He's the author of Quarterback Dads and a senior editor of PointsBet USA. Please welcome Teddy Greenstein to the program. Teddy, it's great to have you on. How are you?
I mean, is this number 4 for me? Maybe number 5? I'm trying to be like in your all-time top 10, John.
It's actually number 8. So you are in the top 10 at this point.
Number 1, baby. I don't only come on when I want to promote a book. I want to come on whenever you'll have me to talk Chicago sports or sports betting or whatever. But this is kind of a special occasion.
What's a quarterback dad, first off?
So a quarterback dad is the guy who is up at 5 in the morning and is asking his kid to start running some drills, and he's making a smoothie with spinach in it, and he's checking to see if his kid's Instagram follower count is any higher than it was yesterday. And he's probably going on a message board and he's saying, man, anonymously, and he's saying, man, my offense coordinator, he doesn't know bleep. My kid is much better. Those receivers are not really supporting him. And he's just overly enthusiastic. And now that's obviously a broad brush. A lot of them are great. A lot of them say, all right, I'm going to hand off my kid to a quarterback tutor or a high school coach or whatever level you're at. And they say, I'm going to hand it off to an expert. But too many of them are overly involved. And just one quick story, like early on in the reporting, I was just going to a 7-on-7 workout. And all of a sudden I look and there's a drone flying overhead. And I'm like, what's with the drone? And the dad says, oh, we got a camera attached to it because I'm getting highlights together for an Instagram package. And that was just of a workout. So these guys are heavily involved in their kid.
How'd you come up with 15 different types?
Yeah. So Donovan Dooley is the guy I worked with on this book. So here, John, here's how the book started. It was actually July 4th of 2020. And I get a text message from an old friend. And he says, hey, my kid has this quarterback trainer named Donovan Dooley out of Detroit. And he's got all these stories of quarterback dads. One time, this guy gave out note cards to the kids. And he said, hey, write something down about your parents. And it's going to be totally anonymous. And you should see what these kids wrote down. Like, hey, Dad, my arm is killing me. Hey, Mom, I had a chance to start until you came along. Now, some of the comments were also grateful, but a lot of them, too many of them, are hoping their mom or usually their dad is going to back off. So anyway, so this guy says to me in a text, he says, do you know anyone who wants to ghostwrite Donovan Dooley's book? I said, yeah, I know somebody. Me. It's football, it's quarterbacks, it's youth sports, it's who's next. And I'd never written a book, and the time was right.
What's the worst type of dad to be out of the 15?
The one that I think is kind of the funniest is the we dad, where he's saying like, yeah, man, we took a visit to Maryland this weekend. And, we're looking to play in the SEC. We might have to move high schools to get it done, but it's like, it's not we. Then there's the reminiscer dad, the guy who rushed for 147 yards in his high school career. But if he hadn't injured his knee or the coach hadn't totally screwed him, he would have been an All-American.
Seems like everybody's a reminiscer type dad, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, well, you know what, John? The more accomplished the dad, the less they brag. What you find. So if I'm talking to Joel Klatt or Brady Quinn or Archie Manning, those guys are not bragging. Man, they accomplished it. It's the dads who fell short for one reason or another who are often the ones who you got to look out for.
What's the key to being a quarterback dad or a good one?
So it's a great question. And the answer to that is you can't say one size fits all. You can't say you should never coach your kid. Maybe you should coach your kid, but it depends on the kid. When I talked to Pat Fitzgerald and I said, all right, who should be the one setting the alarm clock in the morning? Should it be you or should it be the kid at 6 in the morning? And it basically depends on the kid. So you want to have an individual relationship with your kid. That way, you know when you should kick him in the ass and when you should back off. Take Archie Manning. Archie Manning had Peyton Manning, Cooper, and Eli. So Cooper was the class clown. He was the funny one. Peyton was the one who was so intense that he's showing up for a Little League game and he's bossing the other kids around. He's saying, you got to take extra infield practice and you got to take extra batting practice. And Archie is saying to him, would you shut up, man? Some kids just want to show up. Stop yelling at everybody. Like, go on a date. Like, go see a movie. So with Peyton, it was reeling him back. Other kids, it's the opposite. With Eli wouldn't say a word. So with Eli, it was trying to draw it out of him. I'm sure they were wondering, like, even if this kid has the physical tools to play quarterback, is he actually going to be able to lead anybody? He won't say a word. So you got to know your kid, and you got to know the situation. I mean, if you are Kurt Warner and you know every single thing about throwing a football, you should probably coach your kid. If you are Teddy Greenstein and you did not play football and you're a soccer player, you should probably not be coaching your kid. So it really depends.
How good of a quarterback dad would you be?
Oh, that's a great one. I'd like to think I'd be good. So my girls play soccer and they play travel soccer. They're pretty good. They play for the Fire Academy. And I would like to think that I'm the model soccer dad because I don't say a ton on the sidelines, but if I do, it's supportive. It's, and not just for my kid. Like, one of the cool things I found with being a soccer dad that this was refreshing was we all have a lower opinion of our own kid than everybody else. So I'm talking about my kid being lazy, but this parent is saying, oh no, Elle looks great. And I'm saying, no, your kid looks great. And that's the way it should be. I try not to holler at the refs. There've maybe been a time or two where I'm like, offsides, just as sort of a gentle reminder. But there is one mom of a kid, in our soccer group, and there'll be a free kick, and she'll start saying, guys, form a wall. And I'm looking at her. It's like, you're not the coach. Stop coaching. Just be a parent.
Where can viewers find this book, Teddy? How can they find it?
Amazon has been a little spotty. I guess it's a good sign that people go on Amazon and it says that they're out of stock. But really, John, the best place is we have a website and we've put a lot of money and time into it, qbdads.com. And not only can you buy the book, but we've got gear. So we've got hats and quarter zips and T-shirts for youth and adults. Think about this as like a Father's Day present or a Mother's Day present, because we have quarterback mom, quarterback dad, all that kind of stuff. So qbdads.com is the best place to get the book.
What's the response been like, too, getting this out there and promoting it?
Fun as hell, man. It's been great. Response from media partners has really been good, like, WGN, and I've been on Dan Dockich a couple times already. I'll be on with Peggy and Dion Miller over the weekend. I'm doing Paige's podcast on Monday, Paige Sporanic, who works with us at PointsBet. And then, of course, you were kind enough to have me on. So it's been one of the nice things. Like, last night, I actually went to Paul Kennedy's house. He's the Northwestern Media Relations Director, and dropped off some books. It's a great excuse to reconnect with people who maybe I haven't talked to in a bit.
Teddy Greenstein here on Sports Talk Chicago. Teddy, let's talk some more football now, talking about the Bears. What's your take on their new regime?
Let's just see how it goes. I don't have any thought of like it's going to fail or it's going to succeed. Like, I used to be in that world of being a sports writer where you'd have to go to the opening press conference and try to then guess, how it's going to go. There have been some memorable ones. I remember going to Charlie Weiss's at Notre Dame, and he spoke for like 25 minutes before he took a question, which probably should have been an indication that he was totally full of himself. But I think with the Bears, I'm just incredibly curious about Justin Fields. I hope they get good players around him, because I was having a debate the other night at a poker game and they were already crapping on Justin Fields. And I'm like, guys, come on. You're trying to tell me that if Justin Fields had good receivers around him and good coaching and an actual offensive line, he's not going to be a good player? I think he's going to be a great player. There's nothing he's lacking, but we might not ever find it out. Did we ever find out if Mitch Trubisky could really be a starter? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe we only find out then when he goes to a new team like the Bills. So hopefully the Bears will be better, because I went to a bunch of games last year. I was entertaining PointsBet clients, and it was just dreadfully boring. So we need a better football team.
What did you see out of Fields last year when you watched him play?
Just the incredible highs and the incredible lows. It made him impossible to bet. If you're trying to, his over-under for most of these games is, say, 205 passing yards, it's like he could be at 280. He could be at 75. It was just very hard to figure out. Some games he looked like he had no idea what the plan was, or he wasn't in sync with the plan. And then other times you saw, against the Packers, you saw like, wow, this guy's got so much ability and he's going to be the starter for 12 years.
Remember last time we talked, I think it was November, and that was after a recent debacle for the Bears. We talked about Matt Nagy potentially getting fired. When you saw the news, what was your reaction to that?
Oh, absolutely knew it was going to happen. It was interesting how it played out, right? There was that report right before Thanksgiving that he was about to be fired. And then that reporter retracted it. Who knows? Maybe he did know at the time he was going. Doesn't matter, right? At this point, I was actually sad that Matt Nagy didn't make it because I got to know him a little bit. He and his son went out to Augusta National for a day, 5 or 6 years ago. And I walked around with them, and everybody who knows Nagy just loves the guy. I mean, he's an amazing guy. Like, his response to Jeff Dickerson's passing was incredible too. So he's somebody you root for, but it's the NFL. It's not like you can fall back on good graduation rates in college. If you're not winning, you got to go somewhere else.
Do you think he hindered Justin Fields at all last year?
Without knowing, it's hard to say. I mean, I think what hindered Justin Fields is the fact that, like, the Bears think it's perfectly appropriate to have a left tackle who's 39 years old and wasn't even playing football at that point when they tabbed him. So I think it's more about, and Allen Robinson was hurt last year, so it just didn't really have the weapons. It's hard for me to know really what the play calling is and what they're teaching him and what he's looking at.
Are you confident in Luke Gutekunst maybe revitalizing Fields and making this offense a bit better for him?
I mean, I really hope so, but I am not going to pretend to be a Bears expert. I mean, look, like, the Bears are now just 1 of 32 for me. Obviously, I live in Chicago, and I hope they do well because I'm at the games. But I look at teams more from a betting perspective, and I'm looking for an edge there. So I tell you, when you get in this betting world, man, your loyalties die. It's very much like, as I said, I'm loyal to my wallet. And obviously, I want to see Northwestern do well. I went there, and I'm an old Jets fan from New York. I'd like to see the Jets do well. But there are games I bet against the Jets and want to see them lose.
Who's made you the most money this past year in the NFL season?
Well, this is top of mind. I just made a small killing on Marcus Smart as the NBA's Defensive Player of the Year. Our head trader recommended him to a few of us at 16-1 odds, and he just won. So that was definitely a good one. And the Super Bowl, Cooper Kupp MVP. I hit Cooper Kupp MVP at 8-1. He ended up going off at, I think, plus 450 or 5-1. I thought the Rams would win, and I thought there'd be a good chance that Stafford would not be named MVP of the Super Bowl, and that worked out.
What do things look like moving forward for sports betting when it comes to the NFL? Like, how do things look for next year?
So there'll be more and more emphasis on live betting. So, my generation was, oh my God, you got to get your bet in before kickoff. And now there's simply no rush to do that. I mean, sometimes you want to do that, obviously, because you're going to get what you feel is the best line. But you just turn on the game at any point, and you can do PointsBet as lightning bets. So for basketball purposes, you can bet on, like, will a 3-point field goal be made in the first minute of a game? Or they'll take a 4-minute stretch of the game and put a total on that. Over under points in an NBA game for 4 minutes, 29 points or whatever it's going to be. And that's going to come to football. So eventually, I don't know if it'll be play to play because that's so specific. If there's enough time in between, there's an issue with latency, which means, like, the gap between, what's actually happening at Soldier Field and what you're seeing on your TV screen. But right now you can already bet on, like, next drive result. Like, will that be field goal attempt or a punt or a turnover on downs? So it'll be more and more of this micro betting where you can just jump in at any time and get into the, betting realm.
What are PointsBet's plans moving forward, especially in the summer and then the NFL season coming up too?
Yeah, I think it's really so much of it is live betting and also, like, live in-game parlays. So typically if you wanted to construct a same game parlay on, say, a Bears-Falcons game, you had to get that in before. Now, let's say you got time in between the first and second quarter. You can parlay, okay, I like the Bears money line with the over, with Justin Fields passing yards over and Allen Robinson receiving yards over, something like that. So you can actually construct a parlay during the game. That's a big emphasis for us.
Sounds like things are becoming a bit more user-friendly based on what you're saying here, and that seems to be a big shift throughout sports betting. What's kind of prompted that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I've tried to explain what plus 180 and plus, what minus 60 is to my parents 100 different times, and they simply don't get it. And they're smart people, but, like, I think some of it is a generational deal. And I think if you polled most sports fans under the age of 30, they know that minus 160 means you're wagering $160 to turn a profit of 100 for a payout of 260. But we're trying to simplify that. Like, the easiest way to bet, of course, is the spread. Everybody understands if some team's favored by 3.5 points, what that means. Money lines can be a little more complicated. We have points betting. They can be a little more complicated where it's based on a multiplier. Props are really popular now. And I think props are a sneaky way to make a ton of money because, like, if a football game's starting and you just don't have a good feel for who's going to win, you look at those quarterback yards and maybe you can make an educated guess on the over under receiving yards, rushing yards, TDs. It's a fun way to watch a game.
What's the best prop bet you've made recently?
Oh, so better than Marcus Smart and better than Cooper Kupp. God, I got to think of one. I wish I had a really good one for you. Oh, I know what it was. So what was the Patriots game with the terrific weather? It was either a Sunday or a Monday night where it was incredible snow and incredible wind. It was like 40 to 50 miles an hour. And the over-under for passing yards on Mac Jones, like it started at like 175 and it adjusted maybe to like 160. And I think that's the game he attempted like 3 passes.
Right.
So that would have been the one, the dream game where literally if you have the under on his passing yards and he's handing the ball off on every play, you're like, this is why I bet for the easy ones like this.
Teddy Greenstein still here on Sports Talk Chicago. Teddy, a few more questions before we finish up. First up, how much for the Xbox you're selling?
Oh, man. Was that rough? John, I'm such an idiot. Like, I get it. I was about to play paddle tennis, so it's kind of in a rush, and I see something. It's like there's been an attempt to log into your Twitter, and it was just like, paste this code to confirm that you haven't tried to log in. So I thought about it for a second. I'm like, well, as long as I paste the code, I'm fine. I'm not giving anybody my Twitter password. I think that's it. It was well written. It looked like legitimate. Next thing I know, I'm getting texts from people about, hey, man, how much is the Xbox? And I'm like, this is a bad sign. So I got hacked. And I felt terrible about it because there were honestly several people, even friends of mine, who sent hundreds of dollars for an Xbox to supposedly help.
Oh.
Yeah, help a girl. He had a whole story, help a girl with, who is afflicted with cancer. And none of it was true. I mean, I was joking that like, at least the hacker did me a solid and made me look like a good guy as opposed to all the stuff that he could have tweeted out. So that part was good. I finally took over my account 4 or 5 days later, made a contribution to St. Jude's. So something good would come of it. But everybody out there, man, everybody's getting hacked these days. Just don't give up any information. I finally went to the 2-factor what is that word? The
authentication. Yeah.
That's right. Do a 2-factor authentication because it sucks getting hacked. You feel terrible. And then you want to tell your friends to reply in the tweets and warn people, but the guy's already figured it out where, none of the people you follow can reply on anything.
Oh my goodness. That sounds horrible. How stressful was the whole thing in general from getting hacked and then getting the account back in a couple of days?
It was just frustrating. I mean, because at that point, it's not like you can call Twitter. Hi, Mr. Twitter. Can you put, so you're emailing and then you get like, where you're not trustworthy. Like, who am I emailing? And now I'm going to have to change my password. And are they going to see this password? And all of a sudden you're like, shoot, like what is all going on here? But it wasn't that bad. There's a lot of tough things going on in the world. It was just more of a nuisance. And I just felt terrible for I think it was 5 or 6 people who sent money and lost it.
Teddy, before we finish up today, last question. Your top recent round of golf was what?
I've not played a lot lately. I was in Cabo last week and played some crappy golf. Couldn't putt to save my life. But there was a good occasion last year, John. So we have an event called the Ryder's Cup. It's, like the Ryder Cup, but it's the Wisconsin golf media versus the Illinois golf media. And I was lucky enough to play with Eric Ciotti, who's a former professional golfer and a roommate of Luke Donald's at Northwestern. And we were able to win our matches. And I know nobody cares about the nitty gritty, but this one bears repeating. So one of the Wisconsin guys has a 20-foot putt on number 9. He just has to 2-putt from 20 feet. And he blew it like 15 feet past. I think he was a little nervous. So we were able to grind out that victory. And that was pretty fun.
Teddy, thank you so much for joining me. Always a pleasure. Best wishes with the book. Hopefully it does well, and really looking forward to the next time we chat too.
You ask spectacular questions. You actually remind me of Dan Patrick because you ask great questions, short questions. You have the knack. You have the gift. Anytime you want me on, I'll be back.